Okay, well, I think we can make a start. Welcome everyone to this meeting of the Planning Applications Committee. I'm Councillor James Husband, I'm Chairman of the committee. I'm joined to my immediate right by Councillor Mackover and also other colleagues sitting on my left. And it will be the five of us councillors here who will be making the decisions on the cases in front of us. We're also joined by officers who will be giving us advice and making the presentations on the cases before us. Okay. So can I start, Jerome? Apologies for absence.
None.
There are none. Yeah, everyone. There have been some changes in the membership of the committee relatively recently. There might be some old agendas which show different people, but everyone who's intended to be here is indeed here. Can I ask if there are any declarations of interest, colleagues?
No.
Are there any other declarations?
I just want to make a point that another application is not in St Helens but in Dalgarno. It's about the solar panels. So it's up to the chair if you want to take vote or abstain.
Yes. I think if you haven't discussed the application with people, then I think it's entirely.
It was our own application, council for council.
Yes, it is, but I think that's absolutely fine. In similar fashion, we will come to applications in Radley Mews and then in Scarsdale Villas. Now, this is not far away from where I live, and it's in my own ward. A lot of the people mentioned in representations are people that I actually know, but I haven't expressed a view on the applications in advance, so I'm content that I can properly sit to consider them this evening. Okay, now, before we really get going, we have the minutes of the meeting that was held on the 4th of April, and I think Councillor Lane, well, you were actually present at that. Can I sign these if they're really good, colleagues?
Yes.
Is that agreed? Thank you. Now, it might help if I indicate the order in which we're going to take the business this evening. In a moment or two's time, we're going to start by considering the applications at 17 Bury Walk, then the applications relating to Radley Mews, then Westbourne Grove, before moving to the application in Scarsdale Villas, and then 32 Bury Walk, and then finally Kensington Memorial Park. So I think we can make a start. So we will go to the South Pack, and I think Katie Hurrell. Katie, you're going to introduce 17 Bury Walk. Okay?
I am sorry. I'm just trying to get the. There we go. Sorry about that. Thank you very much, Chairman. So there are two applications before you this evening at number 17 Bury Walk. We'll take the first in the pack, so this is SO41 first. The application site is a two-storey dwelling on the east side of Bury Walk, highlighted there with the red pin on the screen in the aerial view. You can see the rear of the properties on this part of Bury Walk back on to the rear of the properties on Plum Place opposite. The property has an existing two-storey rear extension featuring a sloped lead roof at first floor level. You can see it in the left-hand image on the screen there, that's the existing extension. And planning permission is sought to construct a small ground floor extension under this area here. A first floor extension effectively to square off the sloped roof that you can see at the moment. So that red line there on the screen shows you the existing sloping, and you'll see it's proposed to finish the whole of that extension in the lead clad. And a new window would be introduced at first floor level. This slide just shows you this in plan. This is helpful to understand the small extension at ground floor level. So the existing is at the top and proposed below. You can see the area here where that small ground floor extension would be located in an area at the moment that is the courtyard space. And this slide shows you the first floor plan, again the existing at the top, proposed below. Again, hopefully you can make out that red line there, which shows you the current location of that sloped roof. So you can see the size of the extended floor space at this level. The last slide for you is a couple of images actually provided by one of the objectors to the case, but I think it's really helpful to understand the existing situation. So here you can see that sloped roof that I was referring to, which would be extended out and squared off with the lead finish carrying across here. And the ground floor extension, actually you can't see in this image, it would be tucked right around here where my cursor is within that courtyard space. And that concludes the presentation.
Thank you very much. Now, I think we have someone who is registered to speak against this. Sue Snell, are you here? Please join us at the table here. And when you're ready, please, you've got up to 3 minutes to present your objections to this.
Together, because in a sense, it's complicated to separate. So
Well,
hard separate them because
yeah, I think we can probably do this. Obviously, the committee will have to make two separate decisions, but because you've registered to speak on both of the applications.
That's fine, Chairman. I can present the second proposal first, if that's...
Actually, it might be, if you just bear with it, it might be better. I mean, it's perfectly reasonable. Perhaps if you made the presentation for the second application, and then so we can see it all together, if you wish to speak
yes, that's a good idea.
to everything.
That's fine.
Perhaps that's reasonable. Yeah.
Yes.
No, just there's no need to move. That's right.
That's no problem at all.
Yeah. Okay.
So the second application before you this evening is for the conversion of the loft space at the property. So existing on the left-hand side, proposed on the right. You can see the conversion involves the insertion of a 3-window dormer window to that roof slope. Here's the section for you, just to show you that dormer on the right-hand image, and that facilitates the use of that space as a bedroom. I've returned to this image just because I think it's helpful for you to understand where that dormer will be situated. So the red arrow shows you the roof slope within which that dormer would be located. It's also helpful to understand the distance between that roof slope and the property on place. And lastly, I return to this photograph provided by the objector because, again, I think it's really helpful to understand the exact location of that dormer, crudely where that red arrow is. You can see the plan on the right hand of the screen, but it would be located on that light grey roof slope you can see in the left-hand image. Chairman.
Right. So the committee have an idea of both proposals. So when you're ready, please go ahead and yeah, we've got. I think it would be fair. You can actually have up to 6 minutes because you are talking about two applications.
Take that long, but
Good.
I'll
Okay.
really
Well,
quickly,
that's
thank you.
helpful. But please go ahead when you're.
So here I say good evening. I do understand the need to modernise this house, but I am in disagreement with part of the planning proposals for number 17, Berry Walk. Planning say that they will ensure good living conditions are maintained by neighbouring occupiers and the development will protect views. This development will replace larger first floor window and moved ground floor door with added dormer window, meaning a heightened roof wall, will compromise 6 Pond Place living conditions. How can this be considered if no one has inspected from the address? And importantly, I draw attention to the fact that the applicant has not produced a daylight and sunlight report. This is a small early 19th, sorry, I got nervous. This is a small, my house is a small 1800s terrace cottage and backs onto number 17 with only 4 rooms, a tiny yard 4 foot by 4 foot, and the main downstairs room measuring approximately 10 foot by 8 foot across. It is crowded by a high wall and terrace from number 19 Berry Walk, which obscures any view and light already. If this development goes ahead, looking out of the ground floor back window, because of the roof height and dormer, there will be no view of the sky, especially when crowding into the cottage further. Not being able to see the sky and sun in the afternoon would be most distressing and unhealthy. I don't understand why skylight could be more appropriate. And then there's a note that I've added. I was extremely distressed by the architect from number 17, who sent a letter with a form for me to sign if he dropped moving the mentioned window and door from the first application, and then for him to come unannounced one evening to ask if I'd received it. I think it is entirely inappropriate. I did contact planning at the time.
Thank you very much indeed.
Shall I sit down again?
No, just if you stay there, because
Sorry.
colleagues, we may have questions.
Okay.
Any questions to start? Well,
You mentioned in your speech that so you don't have any objections to the top floor extension, provided that it is skylight as opposed to a window.
No.
What's the problem with the window?
The window, the height of the roof will go above that chimney level,
Uh-huh.
and then if you're in my main room, I can't see the sky. I can't see if I stand at the window or I sit down. So I wouldn't have any sky, and because this is such a small space, this is not the view from my house.
Yeah.
This is the view from number 4,
Which is behind it.
which is directly behind. I'm here, just at the side.
But my question is, the window is not overlooking you, is it?
It will be
It
overlooking
will
me
be.
directly. Well, because I'm just here,
Yeah.
the window, when it's moved, will be directly overlooking me, and then the dormer will be so high that it will take the sky.
I'll take the sky away. But you will still be okay with the height if the window is more of a skylight.
Yes, because I wouldn't have all the dormer. I mean, the dormer is what's going to make the height. The roof itself will only be raised a little, but it's the dormer that's going to be so
Yeah.
big.
If they're just changing the window to skylight, dormer will be there still. The height will be there. It will be a
No,
skylight.
but then if it's a
Slight.
skylight, they wouldn't need to move the roof. If you see what I mean.
Okay.
I mean, and if they did move the roof, it would only be a slight something. It's the dormer that's the problem.
Okay. Not the window as such, it's more the dormer itself.
No, but yes, I mean, it's the dormer, it's the
That's how-
volume of
Yeah.
the thing that's going to be the problem.
Yeah.
But it also will be overlooked, but of course it has said that they put special glass in and things. I'm already overlooked by that house. So I
Well,
often have
those
to have the
houses
blinds
are on top
down.
of each other, aren't they?
Sorry?
Those houses, the houses are, all of them are on top of each other, very close.
Yes,
But very
the
small.
ones that are in Pond Place are these 4 that are sort of were for the workmen for the Great Exhibition. They're terribly small and low, and the houses at the back are more
Higher.
substantial and higher. And that little house is a sweet little house, but it's going to be almost overextended. But I understand that somebody wants to live in better conditions, so I'm not against the modernising. I'm just nervous of this space and me being shut in. Because on the other side of Pond Place are big flats.
Yeah.
I did mention that.
Yeah.
So I've already overlooked. So I have windows both sides, so it'll be so overlooked. But I'm not so worried about the overlooking, it's the fact that the light will go and I won't be able to see and I'll miss the sky. Because it is lovely to see the sky, especially in the west, because it's the west and the sun sets and things.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Any other questions? Will, and then.
Just a quick question. I noticed from the officer's response to some of the comments that there appear to be dormers in some of the neighbouring buildings, so 23 Bury Walk and 12 Pond Place. Is it not a fair comment to say that there are other dormers and your neighbours are able to deal with
The
those?
dormer in 23 is a bigger house and it overlooks into Bury Walk. And Bury Walk, the dormers are onto the street. They're not in the back.
Okay, so the dormers are on the other side.
Yes, they're on the street
Okay.
side. That's another why I wondered why they couldn't do a dormer on the street side, as they've already done them in the street. The Pond Place one is a bigger house than the 4 little cottages at the beginning.
And just very quickly, the point that was made about glass, frosted glass, does that alleviate your concerns somewhat, or is it still the height of the dormers?
It's the height of the dormer, it's not the glass and you're looking almost, it's the height that I can't, whatever. And it is worrying that people can be so close, because I can see into that house and they can see into mine already. But it would make it so much more.
Thank you.
Emily,
Can you just go to the slide when you can see exactly? So one previous one, can you just explain to me, so what we see under the red arrow, it's exactly your flat, so you are the first floor?
No, that's not my house, that's number 4. That's the view from number 4. My view from number 6 is there, with the big high wall. It was on the screen earlier.
Can we see it, just,
That's it, the high wall. That's that view. That high wall is my view, and that's
oh, I got it. My understanding was that you are actually under a red arrow. Is there any objection from the neighbors who are actually,
yes,
under
they
the-
have objected.
they objected and are they here to speak?
She's in Scotland. She couldn't come or do anything. No, she's really nervous because her balcony goes right up to that extension, and at the moment the builders have been a bit irregular. They've been using that balcony and left it, and we've had mice and all sorts of things. The problems. The builders aren't very communicative.
So can you correct me that if we're building a bit higher up, we're blocking the view for your neighbor who's in Scotland, correct?
Yes.
And it
Because
was,
this wall here is this wall, this
You are
side, this
here.
is my wall, and this is the wall above it that is from number
Mm-hmm.
19, that blocks my light already. So I can't see where the
What's down
chimney
the
is.
walls?
I see that the new dormer will be above the chimney. So again, and this is taken from upstairs.
and your upper,
Upstairs, yes.
upper quarters.
It's all so cramped, all of it. To make it
It's
more
very
cramped doesn't seem necessary. And also, we've lived for years with this extra build bathroom falling down. It's been a real problem. So it's lovely that it's modernised. You see what I mean? It's not against that. It's just we want to be able to see and to be communicative about it all. But number 4, that's her little balcony with the box on it. So her bathroom goes out further than my house, and that's her balcony to her bathroom. It's very complicated for her. It will be complicated for her.
Thank you for explaining.
any other questions? Okay, then thank you very much, Steve. So if you return to your
Thank you all
seat,
very
that's
much.
very good, thank you. So colleagues, our opportunity to ask officers about this. I just I'll start off by asking Katie Hurrell, daylight sunlight issues. I mean, these buildings are in very close proximity to one another. Presumably, we have taken that into account. Is that right?
Yeah, it's certainly been taken into account. I think it's important to note that a daylight and sunlight report is not a policy requirement. It's a useful tool that sometimes officers might request or find beneficial. In this instance, one wasn't deemed necessary, given although this is very close, not diminishing that at all. But given the distance and the location of the additional bulk, it was felt that one wasn't necessary. But that doesn't mean it's not be considered by the officer.
Sorry, I jumped in first.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah, in one of the slides, I think, are they changing, are they also changing the stairs, location of the stairs? Because in one of the drawings, because I think we looked at two applications, in one of the drawings, the stairs seems to be internal stairs, yeah.
Oh, I'm not sure, not as far as I'm aware, but let's flick through.
There. Are they changing the
So
stairs
that's to allow the proper access into the loft space that would be created internally. Because at the moment it is just a loft, it's not habitable space.
And while they were discussing the application with you, have you recommended to them at all the possibility of a skylight as opposed to a dormer?
I don't know if that conversation was had by the case officer. However, I don't think it would then achieve what they were hoping to achieve in terms of making this loft space usable. So you'll see that the dormer window here provides the headroom to enable the bedroom to be located within the loft. A skylight, keeping the roof profile as it is, I don't believe would allow that space to be used as a bedroom.
But also, those houses are very tiny and they're very on top of each other, all of them. Was there any consideration to the neighbors, their view, their light, their sky?
So certainly the impact on living conditions was considered in both applications. There was actually an amendment sought on the first application for the small rear extension to slightly reduce the bulk of that, bearing in mind the impact on the occupiers on place. No amendment was sought on the roof extension, the dormer window, as it was felt that the impact would be acceptable. In terms of the loss of sky and a view, planning doesn't sort of protect a view. We do look at outlook and sense of enclosure, but it was felt that actually a fairly modest dormer, given the already dense built-up nature, wouldn't actually have a material change. I'm not saying that residents wouldn't notice and perceive something different, but that change wouldn't be harmful.
Have we considered maybe a smaller window?
It potentially is an option, but then it would reduce significantly the usable space again within that loft space. And given officers were satisfied that the impact wouldn't be material, it wasn't felt necessary to ask them to do that. And if I return to the section, if you bear in mind, it's the dormer that's allowing the headspace. If you were to narrow that down, say to a single pane dormer, much of that floor space would then be unusable. So it's a bit of a balance.
Yeah. Thank you.
Will and then Sam.
Just one question from me, Mrs. Carroll. We heard from the objector that in relation to dormers on neighbouring properties that it was only the case that they were on the front of the property, but I note in the report the officer's response says rear and front dormers are in the building group. So could you just confirm for the record, are there yeah, I can see on the photo there, that's a couple of them.
So this is number 23, so there is a large one at the front, but there is also this dormer at the rear. And then this is the rear dormers referred to on Plum Place. As Ms. Snell said, slightly different context given it's a different building, but dormers very much are a feature of the rear elevations along.
Thank you.
So,
Yes, just a mechanical question. The dormer looks on the plans, I was just sort of estimating that it might be in the region of 60 centimetres increase from the existing height, and that would be judged from a distance from the houses that are worried about it, of some 6 or 8 or more metres away?
Yes, I mean, these are estimates, but yes, I'd agree. I mean, this picture is really helpful that Ms. Snell's provided, and you can use the chimney stack sort of as a bit of a guide, but bear in mind most of the roof slope is still slanted and will be back, so although the height increases, you've got a pitched roof and then the straight dormer that's set back a bit. So it might look on elevation to be quite alarmingly a lot higher, but I don't believe you're not going to be looking at the loss of all of this sky space. The actual impact will be less than I think the elevation drawing perhaps leads you to believe.
And yeah, it was just looking at my analysis is that even though even the plan might look, and elevation might look alarming, the actual impact, where even though it might be noticeable, is not actually going to change the perspective, because as everyone has said, it's still a very enclosed, closely linked area.
Yeah, I think that's exactly the conclusion that officers have come to. Yeah.
Questions? Hey, last one.
I couldn't find it. The building itself is not listed. It's just conservation area, which is Chelsea, correct?
That's correct.
So if it's conservation area, why were allowing any changes taking place? Because obviously we're moving from by altering something. We're changing the appearance, right?
Yeah, so the statutory test in terms of any designated heritage asset, which includes conservation areas, is that any development needs to preserve or enhance. It doesn't mean that everything needs to remain as is. Development can change the appearance of a building or an asset as long as it meets those tests and is either of a character and appearance to preserve it or indeed to make it better and enhance it. But so it's very clear that development is able to occur in conservation areas. It just needs to be sensitive.
So do you think this is sensitive development depriving neighbours from light?
So I think those are two separate issues. Officers do think it's sensitive development and that it does preserve the character and appearance of the conservation area. And then officers are confident that although there will be a perceived change, that change won't be significant to be material harmful to the conditions that the neighbours are enjoying in terms of light.
There can be some vote. It's a neighbour who lives in the property. The neighbour is the trouble with light, not the officer, right?
Yes, but we do have a duty to ensure that we are bearing in mind the impact of development on living conditions. It's why it's built into the policies of the development plan and something we do consider carefully when we're putting forward recommendations.
But you see there are objections, there are 8 for objections, and they're all coming from injured members. So do you think it's not reflecting that neighbours actually quite upset about the development in conservation area?
We're certainly not dismissing neighbours' concerns at all, and they have been taken into account in the recommendation. We've taken care to look at them and consider the impact and read those objections.
Was there a proper public consultation where neighbours notified and they put more or less work with the developer, meaning whoever pays the application, and just bring it this question before putting an application?
I couldn't comment on what the applicant might have done before putting an application and whether they approached the neighbours. And we've heard that a letter was sent perhaps once the application was in, but I don't know what might have occurred previously. But certainly in terms of the local planning authority, we undertook all the necessary consultation and directly wrote to the relevant neighbours who needed to be made aware of the proposal.
Dr. Smera, there was not immediate involvement with the neighbours talking to them and saying to this proposal, what do you think?
I don't know, is the honest answer. I don't know if those conversations took place.
Good. So we need to make a decision about these 2 applications. I think, I personally, I think on balance, these kind of applications they're quite tricky because there is already a great deal of overlooking. The buildings are in close proximity to one another, and I think on that basis it's quite difficult to say that some alteration to a building is so dramatic that it changes the existing situation fundamentally. I think also in relation, and this is the second application, I think the mansard, I think clearly the separation from other buildings, as Marco has said, is actually quite considerable in the context of this area. And I think creating an additional living space in a relatively small building, I think is something that's, I think probably should on balance be supported. But Does anyone want to put a contrary view, or perhaps we should move to a vote? People content? Okay, all right. Now, formally, we must make a decision separately. So if I can ask, first of all, if I can see, so this is the first application in our pack. If I can see those in favour of the recommendation, obviously with the conditions attached. Can I see those in favour, please? Are those against? Okay, so that is granted. That's 4 votes to 1. Thank you. And then the second application, which is relating to the dormer window, again, the recommendation is to grant with the conditions attached in the report. Can I see those in favour of that, please? Anybody against? Okay, so that's also granted, again, by 4 votes. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. If we now move on to consider the applications in Radley Mews, and I think Morgan Roberts, Morgan, you're going to present these, I think, yeah?
I am indeed.
So that's, so we're now in the north. Thank you. Please go ahead.
So for ease, I put together the planning application and the advert consent. Hopefully it will become clear to members the reason for that sensitisation. The application site concerns the ground floor units for 21 to 23 Bradley Mews. The photograph on the right-hand side indicates the site, number 21 being on the left-hand side, and number 23 is on the right-hand side. This slide just shows some additional aerial images of the application site. The site is in the St Edward Square and Scarsdale and Abingdon conservation area, and whilst it isn't listed, it is a building that is considered to positively contribute to the character and appearance of that particular conservation area. Again, just some images of the interior of the building, going from left to right. Numbers 21 showing the car showroom with the Land Rover there, obviously. Number 22 showing the formal entrance reception area, and number 23 showing the formal office and staff rooms associated with the current use of the site. The planning application concerns the proposed change of use of the site from sui generis as a car showroom into a Class E personal fitness centre studio. This would involve some internal structures, such as the inclusion of partition walls to then create some changing rooms and a more formalised reception area towards number 23. And the applicant also put notes surrounding the insulation of the site as well for acoustics. The only external alteration occurring in the planning application and the centre of the advert consent application is surrounding the change of the signage from the current firm that owns the site, Twisted, to HBT Studio. So that's the only external alteration that is occurring. With regard to the planning application itself, I had comments from a policy officer to confirm that the change of use is acceptable within this context. The development maintains the character and appearance of the conservation area, and it is deemed in this circumstance that the proposed development would maintain good standards of residential amenities for surrounding neighbours. And it was decided with regard to the advert consent application that sufficient details were provided to state that it was policy compliant. The recommendation that I put forward for both of these applications is that both of them should be granted with the associated conditions and informatives, and I'm very happy to take any questions in relation to both of them.
Good, thank you very much. Now we've got speakers for this, so I think Catherine Knight, I think are you present? Please join us at the table. And I think you're actually representing one of the objectors, aren't you? Please have a seat.
Councillor, I am representing the objector, and thank you very much for today. He unfortunately could not make it due to a prior commitment. One of the other objectors actually who did not also think she could make it has actually been able to turn up. She's been in and out of hospital. I don't know if she's able to come up and assist with questions or not, but it's
Well,
worth
I think,
my while asking.
I think probably people have to register in advance, but I'm sure
No,
you,
that's fine.
I'm sure as an agent you're more than capable of fielding any of the questions that we might have. So
I
please,
think
when you're
that-
ready, and I think in similar fashion as we just had, I think if we're having a discussion about the two applications together, I think obviously it's sensible, it's more generous time, and similarly when the applicant comes forward. Is that okay with you?
the officer's report was written as one, so therefore I assume that there was only 3 minutes from the discussion with the officers for the applicant and the objector, so I have only prepared
Well-
3 minutes.
Okay, well that would be, that's for the planning application, but the advertising consent application also is 3 minutes each side if people wish. Would you prefer to speak separately first to the planning application and then to the advertising consent?
I'll start again, sorry councillor,
Yeah.
it's been a long day. I haven't prepared anything separate on the signage application.
Okay,
Because the
all right.
report was written as one, and therefore, and the lesson on it, and therefore I assumed the applications would be considered together as one, and the 3 minutes would be one. In fact, my
Okay.
comments
All
on
right,
the signage are extremely brief.
Well, they might
because
well
it
be,
was
but that's
fitting in
fine.
what I could
No,
speak,
okay,
so I have
okay,
only got
no,
3 minutes
that's
for that
understood.
reason.
So please, when you're ready,
Does that
you
help?
go ahead and we'll be generous with the time.
No, thank you very much. Chair, councillors, members of the planning committee, my name is Catherine Knight. I am from Russell Cook LLP and I'm present on behalf of my clients, Mr. Merritt Petzold, who apologises he cannot be here today. The objectors seek the refusal of the planning applications or deferral until further assessments are undertaken, in particular in respect of noise and light pollution. Elderly residents currently live above, opposite the proposed site. Planning application, design and access statement, officer's report contains inconsistencies. Noise will be created from the activity. The conditions do not disallow music. Plus there were machines, weights being dropped. Design and access statement refers to music. Conditions of consent refer to restrict sound transfer. Design and access statement states there will be no loud music, not no music. Insulation in the roof is sufficient. I beg to differ. And that noise, my client begs to differ, and that noise mitigation should ensure noise is not audible from outside the premises. Again, there's a question as to what exactly is outside the premises. The officer's assessment does not refer to whether an acoustic expert considers the applicant's measures will achieve no noise audible outside the premises. The doors and glass facades, including sliding glass doors, are relevant to consideration to noise and potential light spill, particularly as no conditioning limiting hours of use. Gyms are not dimly lit, and light spill will create an adverse effect on the tranquility of the mews. Light spill has not been evaluated. The officer's report considers that the sliding doors are kept shut and a noise scheme will stop excessive noise. Excessive is subjective. The sliding doors are not the only doors which must remain shut, and in the summer months it's highly likely doors will be open or an air conditioning unit installed. As recommended by the Director of Health, a noise impact assessment is appropriate. This should be submitted by a suitably qualified and experienced acoustic consultant. Light spill should also be professionally evaluated. Noise methods specified in the acoustic report and those relevant to light spill should be adopted in the proposal, consulted upon with the neighbours, and put before you today prior to determination. There's not sufficient assessment in the planning report, planning application and design access statement to enable to discharge duty in the respect to the Planning Listed Building and Conservation Area Act 1990, which requires you to pay special attention to the desirability of preserving or enhancing the character or appearance of that area. For example, the application officer's report contained few details to demonstrate officer consideration, which is the test. Against the statutory requirements, character includes the majority residential nature of the mews. In respect of signage, material planning consideration is the impact of the proposed illuminated signage on the conservation area. The application and the officer's report contain few details, no drawings of the illumination, and no evaluation against the regulations. The law relating to the display of advertisements is the Town and Country Control Advertisements Regulations 1992. Further information is required to determine whether or not the application meets these regulations, such as amenity, being the general characteristics of the locality, including the presence of any feature of historical similar interest, and the residential nature. In summary, it's considered that the proposal is not suitable for the closely bound neighbourhood, does not comply with the development plan policies such as the Conservation Area and Planning Policy 2021. Design and access statement lacks sufficient detail to enable a proper assessment and determination value. The recommended conditions of consent are uncertain in their meaning, without evidential basis as to whether they are sufficient mitigation for the intended use. All of which are material planning considerations. The application in its current form should be refused.
Thank you very much. Now, I think we have the applicant, Lynn Hanson. If you, so, are you're present, Lynn Hanson?
Yes.
Yeah, please
yes, thank you.
come up and join us at the table as well. And I think if you're happy to address both applications,
I am, yes.
then that's good. And then afterwards there'll be questions. And you've got plenty of time. You've got over 4 minutes to speak. So please go ahead when you're ready.
Just to clarify, is it 3 + 3 minutes? 6
Yes,
minutes?
well, potentially it could be.
Okay,
Yes,
right,
yeah.
okay.
But you've got masses of time.
All right, okay, I'm sure we'll cover it. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. We have received numerous objections to the conversion from a car showroom to a personal training studio, which many of the objections are based on assumptions of what is not really there and what my business is about. So I will just give a short presentation of what the business is about and address some of those objections individually. Hanson Personal Training is a private one-to-one studio, strictly by appointment only. It's well established and is providing one-to-one personal training to a very affluent older clientele in 5-star hotels for more than 15 years. Our clients, with the majority being 45 years old or more, want a calm, they want a focused workout in a private setting. They don't go to Virgin, they don't go to Equinox, they want intimacy. They want to be with one-to-one trainer that helps to put the weights back in place. Most of the clients have been training with Hanson Personal Training for years, and never once we had a complaint from any of the guests or from any of the hotels. This is what this is. Now, there's been objections from the neighbours regarding change of usage, impact of neighbouring living conditions, and impact related to transportation and service networks. Most of these are based on assumption and not at all what Hanson Personal Training represents. I hope the following clarifies. Number 1, change of usage. The site is already a commercial property, classified as a sui generis a car showroom. Neighbours know that. They live above a commercial unit. And the current occupier operates on an ad hoc basis, currently 3 times a week by appointment only. They're used to that being non-operative in a commercial unit. There are no policies in place that safeguard the usage of the site as a car garage, or any conditions to restrict the usage in any way as such. Hanson Personal Training, as mentioned in introduction, offer positive benefit to the neighbourhood as a provider of exercise and healthy living. It's a green alternative from fumes from car engine and noisy cars that potential new occupier as a car dealer might represent. Hanson Personal Training is therefore considered to be of social and community use in the local plan, where the policy CK1 supports the creation of social and community facilities which predominantly serve or which provide significant benefits to borough residents. Number 2, the neighbourhood living conditions. Objections were received in relation to the potential noise, to footfall and the proposed usage of the site. This has been addressed as the planning officer took note of this during the visit and the final review of the application. Environment Health was consulted and no objections were made. And just to underline that none of our clients we're going to a Zumba class. None of our clients are doing group exercise. It's a one-to-one trainer. They don't throw weights around, nor do they enjoy live music. as of yet, we've been playing music without the speaker on a phone. Most of them don't even enjoy listening to music. They are stressed, they're elderly, they're there for focus one-to-one. And also, we've been working on a wooden floor without any mats. It's been that gentle. We give them a weight, we take the weight carefully and put it back. There is no noise of the weights. Regarding the sound, a sound installation would also be able to sufficiently protect neighbours and also further limit any potential noise that might occur. But again, it's not a crowded space. This is a one-to-one. There would be maybe 3, maybe 5 clients maximum. There is no group exercise, there's no loud music. Other comments regarding the existing nearby gyms. Gyms nearby that also operate underneath a residential have been observed, but each application should be assessed upon its own merits and no policy to resist usage exists due to close proximity to other gyms. Regarding transportation, most of our clients walk or they take a bike to come to facilities that all live in the borough. They're entitled to use local parking as upon their residency. Regarding the signage, there is only one external change that's been proposed to the property, and the changes are minor alteration. It's the same spot as the current Twisted, it's the same colours, and the changes are minor. The only change is the business name. It's appropriate designed and having a acceptable visual amenity impact. This is according with the local plan. Advertisement consent application can only consider impact on highway safety and visual amenity. Given the existing signage of the site, the new application is acceptable with both. Overall, the signage would also preserve the character and appearance of the Edward Square and Abingdon Conservation Area. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. So colleagues, questions? Sam, you go first.
Thank you. This is a question to the applicant, just to check a couple of details. I have opposite me in the ground floor of a Muse property, a personal grooming gym, and I would say that they have been superb neighbours for all the residents, so that I know that it can be done like that. However, this is a reasonably big space, and whatever you do, any permission that we give will be lasting for other people as well. And my biggest concern is about the noise, particularly for people living above, because I can completely understand, and I absolutely take what you say, that your clients will want to focus and listen to their instructions carefully, and there won't be much noise. There might be the occasional talking or something like that. But someone else could come along, and I don't think there are any hours proposed or hours of control proposed at the moment, but we can check on that. But if someone else takes over and it becomes a gym, then it can have all sorts of long hours and use restrictions. So my question is, for your purposes, would you accept a no amplified music condition?
What would you mean by that?
No, music should not be played to preserve the immunity, particularly of neighbours living above.
I would not accept no music being played. The volume significantly reduced. There would be no high volume. We could consider not playing music early morning, late evening. But no music at all. I think it's unreasonable given the fact there is another person playing in the studio just across the road, a Kensington studio. They're open from 6:30 until 10. They play music. There's trainers that come and go, very high traffic. They have been granted this. There's a Pilates studio just across the road playing music. I think it would be unfair to restrict the usage of the space. At the same time, I'm a resident of the neighbourhood. It's in my interest to build a good relationship with the neighbours. I want to have a good energy. I want to contribute to the neighbourhood. I don't, it's not my,
It was a question to you.
Thank you.
It's sort of Mark's question. And the second question, if I may just do this one, which is what would be your proposed operating hours, because that's also another concern, because each time someone comes and goes, then even if they're doing it quietly, it's just in what is an extremely quiet use. It's an extra level of activity.
My proposed opening hours would be not dissimilar from Kensington Studio and the Pilates Studio just across the road. That would be from 7 o'clock until 10 o'clock. We could look at reduced during from 8 till 5 o'clock during the weekends. Again, you know, I'm very much prepared to have a sound assessment professionally done. And the landlord has also assured me there is a new installation for the sound already existing in the ceiling. Now, I'm a new tenant, potentially occupier. I would have to test that professionally, but that's what I've learned from the agent and the landlord.
Will.
The question for the objector first, and just in relation to this application, it raised a number of issues. Is it at its core an objection to the change of use, or if we had stricter conditions, say on the signage or noise, would that be a compromise that the objectors would be willing to back?
I asked that question, and my instructions are that I would like the application refused of the first instance. The second instance is that Mark would actually like to see very strict conditions around noise use. There's no management plan. It's not just music. There is the up and down. We have got, you know, the application is for a change of use from sui generis to ED fitness centre. You know, it's not, doesn't actually say, you know, it's going to be for X, Y, Z. There's no particular management plan, as I say, as to what's happening. So, bottom line is, we would like more tighter conditions if it is going to be approved. Don't consider there sufficient information for you today to actually make that assessment in respect of the ceiling insulation. Sadly, for the applicant sitting next to me, my clients had a totally different view on whether the insulation of the roof and whether or not is actually sufficient. So, you know, there really is some contrary views out there that through the assessment.
Thank you, and then just a very quick follow-up, if I may, for the applicant. Would that, essentially what I'm trying to get is how willing would you be to compromise on perhaps issues like the signage? And we've heard from Councillor McAvoy about noise as well. I think his point that was made that obviously your clients and your business may not be a problem, but once if we agree to this change of use, you could sell, move somewhere else, and we could have someone come in running a totally different type of gym. So just keen to ensure that we do have some strict conditions. So if, for instance, on the music condition, we were to add sound any gym equipment or potential hours of control, so not late at night or not early in the morning, would that be something you'd be willing to
I would be happy to. Again, it's not an issue, but I have already been in contact with assessors. I've chosen not to go ahead with it as of yet, before I'm granted permission. But the sound test will be measuring weight dropping, although it's not a case, but in case in the event of an accident or something, you know, if there's a treadmill, we want to make sure that doesn't travel above. Now, I think like everybody has one common objective, and we're sharing the same potentially landlord. And he wants to keep his tenants happy. He wants to keep me happy. You know, I'm not there to cause any trouble. And equally, you know, he wants to keep his tenants. I think, like, you know, we really have to work together with this. I think, like, you know, from the neighbours, they need to also consider the alternative where a fully operating car dealer coming in terms of the noise and in terms of the view. They can't expect that this is going to be an idle, vacant commercial property that they're living above. That's unreasonable. And it's also unreasonable to set firm restrictions on my business when the neighbour just across the road with residential above have been granted the same. It should seek a precedence.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a question if it's not overlapping with yours.
No, it's okay, go ahead.
Yeah, so can you just shine light how this business looks like for today? Meaning, how many people are coming to this business in a day, in a week? How many customers you have? And in the same time, do you play a radio when you are there? How noisy you are? Do you have sort of conferences there? how many people in a group you can accommodate?
There is no group. There is a one-to-one. You coming in, the trainer. There's no clients hanging around without the trainer coming to greet to greet the person, and the person will take them to the 60-minute session on a one-to-one.
No,
Now,
you
we
understand
are-
my question.
Oh, sorry.
I want to know for today how your business is run. It's run as a cash shop. So I want to see for today how many customers do you have, how your business looks like now. I
Today,
just want to compare how different
Of
it
course.
will be from what you are running. This is why I'm asking you how many customers you have for today before this application be granted or whatever.
As a car show.
And so more or less, I just want to really see how your business runs and how it affects the neighbors and how different it will be, particularly when it's another.
it will be 3 to 5 clients with trainers maximum.
You still
At the
understand?
moment, just bear with me. At the moment, it's a one-to-one. So where I have the exclusivity over a facility, where I come in, there's a client there with me. There's another client going to with a trainer in a different hotel. So it's a one-to-one. Sometimes we're overlapping 2 to 2, but that's it.
You still don't understand.
Yeah.
Today your business is a car show, right?
I can't show.
It's not her business.
It's not having.
It's the existing business, which is, she bought over and she's doing something else. So you're asking about
So you
the
don't
car
have
business?
really the feedback how just there were any complaints about, because what I want to see how different if this application goes ahead, how different it will be from whatever it's or
Yes.
was there in the present.
So my business is a personal training studio, and I would like to have a personal training studio where it currently is a car showroom at the moment. At the moment, there is a occupier that is working there 3 times a week on an ad hoc appointment
Okay,
basis.
That's what I want to know.
That's
What
car
happens for today as we speak?
as the car, yes. So it's non-operative, so to speak.
Okay.
My business is operative, and I would like to replace car engine and fumes with exercise and health living on a one-to-one appointment only basis.
Well,
It's a plain lies. I've got a couple of questions. You're not the only trainer, there's other trainers there.
Yes.
So what's the maximum? 3 you said? Is it?
Maximum
Maximum
3
trainers
till
would be-
5. We still have, we still train in someone's houses, and
In the premises.
in the premises it will be maximum 5. Most likely, average 3 trainers at any
So-
given time.
So 3 trainers with 1 person each or 2
Each.
maximum?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay, so that's about 6 people in a place, at any moment.
Yes.
Would you consider a condition whereby there is no use of amplifiers, for instance, for the music?
Possibly from 7 till 8, I would say, but I mean, amplifier, it's not going to be speakers hanging off the ceiling. It might be, there will be music playable, but yeah. But during the day, I don't think this should be considered any different than other similar businesses across the road.
Can I just ask last question? Thank you. Have you read those conditions? Are you happy with those conditions?
I support those conditions.
Yes, of course. Okay, I don't have more questions.
I've got just a couple of quick ones at the end. Stratford Road, obviously around the corner, is got a number of shops, quite a traditional kind of little shopping area in many ways. There aren't a lot of illuminated signs at all, actually. And of course, if you go down into Radley News, things are even quieter. I mean, I don't think there's any illumination at all. Would you be content that to accept that a sign couldn't be illuminated in this premises?
You mean to have the light behind it?
Yeah, yes. So it's yeah.
I'm
so-
happy
so-
to consider it, but Kensington Studios do actually have illumination on that signage.
But I think they're on a flank wall, aren't they? They're in a slightly different location, and they don't really face anybody. Whereas the former car showroom, as we must describe it, the former car showroom obviously faces onto properties immediately across the Mews in Radley Mews, don't they? So having an illuminated sign I mean, even if it was switched off in the evening, it's still, you know, you've got a kind of light box, if
Yes.
you like, shining at you, you know, on a winter's afternoon. It would be quite prominent for a big chunk of the day.
I would say if it's a
Yeah.
sticking point, I'm happy to,
You'd be prepared
no
to do
project on that one.
The other point, and it's been, I think, alluded to by my colleagues, obviously a car showroom has enormous plate glass windows on it. And I think while maybe there are people who are quite happy to look at a 1966 E-Type Jaguar or something like that through an enormous plate glass window, staring at people having a personal fitness session may not be something that they particularly want to. And equally, your clients may not want people sort of gawping in at them. Would the idea of having the not a structure, any sort of structural alteration, but having a sort of frosting, I think it'd be effectively just be a
Yes.
film, up to a sort of reasonable level. Is that something,
Correct, yes.
were we to add that as a condition, is that something that would be reasonable?
Yeah, very good.
You'd be happy with
Yes,
that?
happy with that.
Right. Okay, thank you. Any other questions? No, thank you very much. So if you both return to your seats. So the officers got, I think we've got quite a lot here to think about. I suppose we need to start with the very first point, which is one that within the structure of the planning system and our own planning policies, the former car showroom, which, as I say, was very, very unusual, often extraordinarily expensive cars with just the occasional coming and going of a customer. Clearly, that's an unusual form of premises. But a gym or a personal fitness studio, that it's really very hard to see, for me to see an objection to that change of use. I mean, it seems to me quite clear cut. Is that fair? Is that an officer view that?
It is a view that I share, Councillor Husband. I think that in terms of thinking about it as a business model, as the proposed change of use, it's something that I wanted to ensure that I had policy colleagues comment about it, to which I then put those comments in the report anyway, and they did not raise any objection to the change of use.
Okay. Before we move on, I just quickly want to, I'm just thinking of things that colleagues may well be interested in. That there would be no problem at all about adding hours of use.
No, I wouldn't have any
that would
objection
be
to that at all.
perfectly sensible, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
I think the idea of having some kind of some sort of sound noise assessment.
Yeah.
I think that's something that I think would actually be quite important.
Absolutely.
And I think it may well be that the applicant is being completely straightforward and that their intention is to have a business that does not involve loud music being played continuously. But a gym could become another gym where loud music was played. So is that's a condition that we could add, couldn't we?
Yes, I believe that would be a
reasonable.
sensible one to add, yes.
And I think the things that I mentioned at the end about some sort of frosted screening,
Again, that would also be a reasonable condition.
would it be to 1.5 metres, and sometimes for windows, I think we sometimes use 1.5 metres, don't we?
For 1.7 under permitted development in most cases for obscure glazing, and that
Okay, so I mean that's actually quite high, but we could certainly, there's no problem with that. And finally, I think if it's accepted that the sign, okay, there can be a sign, but it can't be illuminated. Is that something, again, by condition, we could say that?
Yes, I think that obviously the proposed development is to have an internally illuminated signage.
Yes.
And if I may just bring the point that
Yeah.
obviously in terms of the projection of the signage, where the cursor is on the screen here, that's roughly where the sign will be going. So in terms of impacting residential amenities, it would most likely impact. It is conceded here at number 24 Radley Mews, but it would most likely be going down towards the highway of Stratford Road as well. I think that the idea of it to be non-illuminating as a condition would be appropriate, would meet the tests in this
So that would be
circumstance.
reasonable.
Yes.
Very good. Thank you very much for that. Sam, do you want to take this forward? Because I think there's quite a lot going on, isn't there? But to try and make this into something that's acceptable.
I think the discussion has been useful for everybody because we've understood the business and the rationale. I think I also comment in my own ward that where there are car showrooms turned into car servicing operations with people living above them and next to them, that has been a source of huge numbers of complaints from fumes and other things. So I can see that as being rational. The question really, I think now, of what we've heard here comes down to the impact on the amenity of immediate neighbours.
Yes.
How the wording didn't seem to be quite tight enough here, where it says there shouldn't be excessive noise. I think if I was looking at the amenity of neighbours, they would need to know that they could continue occupying their flats without. There's a thumping that happens, particularly if I'm on one, when you're on a treadmill, that I think will probably be quite audible, and also there's just an effect of people talking over music and that sort of stuff. So the question is, and I know that one hasn't been done yet, but can it be conditioned that that there would be a high degree of insulation, so that particularly during out of normal business hours type operations, that there would be no noise detectable, and only very controlled noise during normal business hours. So I mean, I'm not objecting to people wanting to have personal training at early in the morning or after work. That's the nature of it. But that's where there needs to be more, even less detection by residents. Is that sort of questions that you would ask as well?
Yeah.
Or to overdo the work?
So I think that in terms of a condition that would be put forward, that obviously we would want a scheme of sound insulation, as pointed out in condition 4, in relation to that. I think that obviously then mitigating any potential noise, I think that sound insulation assessment would then have to cover what the existing conditions are of the site and whether that would meet the required standards of that condition. Sorry, it's just a wee bit distracting with the background noise. If it is the case that they are able to provide evidence to state that the existing conditions are sufficient, then we would take that into consideration. However, I think that if there was a further requirement to install further sound insulation, then I think it would be reasonable in this circumstance for that condition to be added in this circumstance, with the proviso that a proficient sound noise insulation assessment is conducted with a condition, an additional condition almost being a follow-up to then state if the existing does need adding, that we then have a proper sound insulation test that would be observed, especially by environmental health officers.
And just to cut through that, you said there would be this if it was moving forward to being granted tonight, it would be subject to a full acoustic test that would demonstrate that there would be an ability either now or works sufficiently needed to be done to protect the immunity of other residents from both vibration and sound and the other sorts of noise that would be experienced with that use.
Yes, absolutely. That's what I would think.
Well,
just first to say I completely agree with the comments of Councillor Husband and Councillor Mackever and the conditions they proposed. So a couple of further points, if I may, Mr. Roberts. Just in terms of condition 3, the no audible music, would a possibility be to perhaps expand on that by also saying gym equipment can't be used to the extent that it can be audible outside the premises. Would that be a reasonable conclusion?
I think it would be, personally, Councillor Lane. I think that, obviously, as we've heard from the applicants, they are intending to use it as a one-to-one studio basis, and that would be within the confines of the application site. There's been nothing to suggest within the documentation that they would, open the doors and then use that lane of Brackney Mews to then facilitate outdoor exercise. And I personally think that would be a reasonable condition to add that, because it would not only safeguard the residential amenity for the potential gym that's going to occur at this site, but it would also cover it for potential gyms in the future.
Right, and just one final question, if I may, Mr. Roberts, just in relation to, we've heard that this type of gym is personal training, it's one-to-one, 3 to 5 trainers, and then the clients are maybe 10, 11 people maximum. I'm concerned by the fact that this, of course, could be sold, and once the use can be used as a gym, anyone can use it as a gym. It could be a boxer's gym, 50-odd people inside. Is it possible to condition maximum occupancy requirements, or is that not something that we're able to condition?
If I may, Councillor Lane, I would refer to colleagues on that just to double check with them in terms of the occupancy of it. Personally, when I've come across various kinds of conditions such as this, obviously, take a restaurant, for example, you would then know the covers that a restaurant would have, and you would know the full capacity numbers in relation to that. But I'm not entirely sure whether that is a possibility. Could I refer to colleagues, please?
Through you. I understand the desire to, prevent unacceptable noise. There is a concern that whilst we can restrict numbers of people, we are straying potentially into being unnecessarily prohibitive on a use function. And I think if you've got other conditions relating to sound insulation, no music audible outside, and so on,
Yes.
then, in theory, they should then protect it no matter how many people. I just would worry that we're putting on a number, and it would be an arbitrary number that we would come up with potentially. I know she said about the number of clients, but it's potentially in terms of financial viability of that business.
Thank you.
It's whether they're necessary with other conditions.
Wanda, did you want
Okay,
to?
just a small comment. So if I totally understand why we cannot say we're not condition the numbers, but can we condition the type of gym? For instance, a gym that is only for one-to-one training, as opposed to a Pilates studio or a gym whereby you have Zumba and stepping and all that. Is that
Again, I think we're straying into potentially being overly restrictive. I think if the occupier wanted to do something, well, it'd be a very quiet class if they can't have any music playing. And the other conditions I think are there to
wear
protect.
headphones.
Well,
A lot of classes now do headphones whereby you don't even hear, you only hear it if you're working out. My spinning class is just headphones.
I think we're probably trying to do things that the planning system basically doesn't allow us to do. Emma, just,
It is supplementary, which means protected. So how many times we can change? This is sort of just to gain knowledge and understand it better. So moving from sui generis, we are approving the personal training studio. Can in one point the lady apply for something else, or is it final? How many times sui generis can change the use?
Well, we have to assess every application that comes in based upon its own merits, and one does not have a crystal ball in terms of what this site could potentially be used for in the future. But obviously, if an applicant were to come along after Ms Hanson, who wanted to change the premises for a different use, they would have to go through a similar process in order to then change the use of the site again into something that they would intend to do with that particular site. Obviously, this site, there are limited uses one could use it for, but that limitation is dependent on the imagination of the person and obviously planning law.
So just really summarize. This application is exactly for what it states here. We are not speculating what will happen and judging what will happen. It's literally application as it stands today, with all the conditions the lady wants to attach and all the consent from residents. So I think the condition we talk about is quite reasonable. The lady already is quite happy with it. I think it would be maybe, it's depending what colleagues think about, to add that in regards to noise, that reinforcement from environmental health can be taken in a way that using boxes the noise boxes can be placed in the residential places. So more or less to reinforce conditions in the way that applicant understands that environmental health can be notified, that action can be taken by reinforcement team of council, and I think I would be happy as myself with it.
I think that the suggested conditions as put forward by your colleagues would be reasonable and respectful of both the applicant's wishes, but also of the residents in that regard, including the use of sound amplifiers and that kind of thing. Obviously, you know, we've got those conditions that are suggested and would be attached with the planning application anyway. If there were to be an occurrence of a sound amplifier, then residents would seek to then contact the enforcement team, for which environmental health could be consulted on the application by those enforcement colleagues.
Good. Very good. Thank you very much. So,
One quick definition point. Ms. Knight pointed out right at the beginning of her speech, she said there's a dispute, a sort of mixed understanding about what outside the premises would mean. Does that mean outside the whole building, or does it mean outside just the application site itself, of the gym, which is the gym?
I would assume it's outside of the application site, which would obviously be, in this case, be for the change of use as a gym. So, i.e., that area surrounding Radley Mews, particularly along this area with the sliding doors. As
because I was taking it to mean something different. I was taking it outside the premises. I was no noise outside the premises. But actually mean what's upstairs from it as well. I don't know whether that was what the objector was asking. We're all having a different understanding.
Yeah.
Because that's important. If we're saying outside the premises, and we're all thinking it means what goes upstairs, and the other means what you might do if you're walking on the street.
No, it's
that's what we're trying to protect against, particularly the residents above.
Yeah, because I think that the conditions that have been suggested would protect the residents both upstairs but in the surrounding area as well in that regard.
I mean, just on that, Chairman, if I may, I mean, you can include, the way that condition 3 is written at the moment refers to music outside the premises if you're walking past. You're not supposed to hear music, but that could be changed to include reference to the pub as well. If that was something.
I think that's reasonable, yes.
Before, if I may as well, just before you go to a vote, I'm just picking up on the point about the elimination of the signage.
Yes.
Now, the description of development for both the planning application and the conservation area consent advertisement consent does include reference to internally illuminated signage within the description of development. I just wanted to ask Hazel, if I may, just what the implications of that are if members were minded to try and change that to no illumination.
Potentially slightly problematic in terms of it's in the description of the development, but if they put it on as a condition, say it's turned off during maybe certain hours, maybe that would be something
to overcome it as opposed to removing it.
Well, I think no, I understand exactly what you mean. I think the applicant has been clear that it is something that's acceptable, that it would not be illuminated. The fact it's written there in the description. I think having some sort of condition that
it's more of a legal technicality.
Yeah, well, yes, but we've heard the applicant accept it, so it's slightly, you know.
In the description of the development, that's what you're getting at, isn't it?
Yes.
Description of the application. So if you're adding a condition on to remove part of the description of the application, then are you effectively declining the application? I think that's what you're getting at.
It's just where it stands legally. I mean, you could word the condition perhaps to say notwithstanding the description of development application is not granted for.
Yeah, that seems a sensible way to.
The internal illumination.
Yeah.
If that's a way around. I just wanted to flag that.
Yeah, no, I thought about that myself. So no, you're quite absolutely right to raise it.
Can I just ask a question?
Yeah.
Can we not, because I don't think it's right, if, for instance, the neighbour who's running a similar business has a laminated sign, I'm not discriminating here, and I'm not unfair. Should we just more or less put the limit on time used? Just literally switch after 6 months with the business.
It's not, it's where it is, it's different area.
So just to show the
Yeah,
point
yeah.
here, the illuminated sign would be where the cursor is now, roughly speaking. But the illuminated sign at the gym studio, the Kensington studio, beg my pardon, is roughly there. And it's facing a flank wall of this neighbour here. So it's not really impacting the residential amenities of anybody there. And pardon me, Councillor Husband, if I may, just in terms of operational hours, just to be clear, I rang the owner of the Kensington studio to then clarify the opening hours of that, because I think it's important to then state what they are. They stated to me that their operational hours are between 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. Monday through to Friday, and 8 a.m. to 8:30 p.m. on a Saturday and Sunday. So I just wanted members to know of that fact as well.
But they are in a basement.
Yes, I mean, they are.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, you can't intervene from the public gallery, but I think it's a fair point that it's slightly, I mean, it is very close by, but this neighbouring gym is in a slightly different location, and it's in a basement, you see, so it's a slightly different matter. Right, so now I'm going to have to try and remember what everyone has said, because we're going to take a vote on the planning permission first. So I've got the following. So first of all, we are going to insert in condition 3 that no music shall be audible outside and above.
Or words to that effect.
Yes, and also noise from gym equipment, which is obviously similar to music. For condition 4, I think we are saying that we're going to add a further noise condition to say that there has to be a further assessment. I think that was something that I understood people, the colleagues that we were in favour of.
Just on that, Chairman, that's a further noise assessment post the implementation of the installation.
Yes, exactly. That's precisely, yes. Yeah. So Mr. Moores got that. Sorry, Mr. Roberts has got that. And I think the sliding doors, and it have to be a new condition, that the sliding doors at the front have to be frosted up to, should we say?
Is it just the doors or the whole wall? The whole.
Well, it's the windows. Yeah. It's the windows. Well, it's all glass at the front. It's all glass at the front. I would suggest one.
1.7 metres above internal floor level.
Okay.
Is usually what is.
All right, it's a standard. Okay, so we need a new condition on that. Now, on hours, I would be inclined, colleagues, to go with what the applicant actually suggested she was prepared to accept, which was 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. weekdays and 8 until 5 p.m. at the weekends. I'd be inclined to go along with that.
Holidays.
Sorry.
Holidays as well for the 8 till 5 p.m.
Yes, I guess so. Yes. And I think I've now picked up the various conditions. And finally, that we have agreed that notwithstanding the description, signage cannot be illuminated.
Yes.
Okay, and that's obviously it relates to residential amenity.
If I can, I would be very happy if we really put extra that bridge of noise from the building, like any bridge from noise of the building, will be subject to the environmental health action, something in that line.
Well, I think the implication of having these noise conditions is that if they were not met, then environmental health would naturally be involved. So we probably don't need to say that. So if I can now, colleagues, so I think, Mr. Roberts, you've got all of these, all our discussion.
Yeah.
So if I can see those in favour of the planning application with all of these conditions being granted, as we have discussed. Can I see those in favour, please? Okay, so that's agreed. Now, if we move to the advertising consent, because we formally have to make a decision on that. Now, of course, that is, I think, really the advertising consent. Really, it's just the point about illumination that is the only thing which is different. I think, isn't it? So, yeah. So that's the addition. That's the only point there. So the advertising consent recommendation is to grant that, but obviously, as discussed, the sign cannot be illuminated. Can I see those in favour of granting that, please? So that is agreed as well. Thank you. Let's just take a short break of just a minute or two, just very, very brief.
That when the or is it because it's not so pretty much
No, it's Queensgate. So
I tell you not. So your after business, not when it's your business and everyone just comparison. So sorry, well, I've already see it. I'm
Just walk past
It's going to 7 days of the park. And from daylight to dark and till 7 o'clock at night, I think it's totally unacceptable. And I tried to get to speak today because I've been to and from hospital all last week and I listened to try to put my hand down. And there's so many fallacious things in the application. The gym that's there is in the basement and there's foundations of the houses above it, which means no one gets any noise out of it. There's been no elimination twisted, and then nothing, never gets a ground either. I mean, it's just a farce, to be honest.
Thank you so much.
So we are still at the bit of drift. That's fair. So 30 minutes.
Yes. Yes, so
lunch times, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, because I can work from home those days. Or, yeah, just outside working hours, so that's but if you take the space, but it's take holidays. Thanks, flexibility to be able to do appreciate it. It's best to check these things. Thanks.
Apologies, Chairman, we're just assisting some of the speakers on the last case.
Very good. Okay, I think we can restart. Paul Grove, and I think Lisa Chung. I think, Lisa, you're going to present this, aren't you?
I am, thank you, Chairman. Before I kick off with my presentation, I just want to draw members' attention to the addendum report we received, an additional representation, and that's part of the pack for you just to consider, and it focuses on comments on the report itself that you're considering this evening. So as per the description, the application is for alterations to the front and rear of the building, comprised of a glass conservatory at the back, replacement of plant equipment, and then just associated works including some minor shopfront changes. The first slide is just an aerial image of the site. You'll see that it's outlined in red. Just in terms of the front shot, this is quite old. Works have been going on to as an internal refit of the building, but it used to be in a previous life a public house, and there's reference to that in some of the representations that have been made, and then in recent years it's been restaurant, cafe type uses. There is no change of use proposed, it is simply external and internal works to benefit the new occupier and operator. So just some photos of inside and out, and obviously some of this has moved on somewhat given works that are going on, but the top two photos are the ground floor on the left-hand side, and then on the right-hand side, that's the steps leading down into the basement. That will make more sense when we work through the drawings. And then in the bottom two photos is just the rear of the site, and you'll see the arrangement with the existing staircase, the existing rear projections, and the relationship with the neighbours. And if I just go back one, actually, just to point out too, is obviously in terms of kind of the character of the area, obviously Westbourne Grove is fairly commercial at ground floor, with residential units above, but the site does back onto Lonsdale Road, which is predominantly residential, so you've got a mixture of single family dwellings and flats. So just moving on to the drawings for you, if I could just use the cursor. So this is the front of the site here. This just shows you the arrangement inside with the covers and how that will be designed, and then this is the conservatory that you see at the back here. Right, okay. So you can see the conservatory, and then the steps, the new staircase leading down into the garden. So you'll see in the previous shot it was in this sort of location. And then moving to the basement, this is kind of the back of house requirements for the restaurant. You'll see arrangements of toilets and so on. Just pointing out the replacement plant is going to be internalised to the extent of it will be within the basement. There'll be some external louvers that we'll see in an elevation in a moment. And just a roof plan, I just wanted to show you the roof of the conservatory, which is largely glazed. Moving on to the front and rear elevations, on the left-hand side is the front. So what's happening at this part is basically the door is swapping with a window, so it's quite a modest alteration. And then at the back you can start to see how the conservatory works with regards to the staircase leading down into the garden, and these are the external louvers that I mentioned just a moment ago. Just a couple of sections through just to see, it'll show you how the conservatory relates to the rest of the building. The restaurant will encompass the 2 floors, and again just pointing out the louvers here for your information, and then just another section again just to show you how the conservatory relates to the garden levels. I don't think I've got anything else further to add. I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. We've got a few people registered to speak here. First of all, think Heather Gething. So please do come forward and do join us.
Thank you very much.
And thanks for bearing with us. So please, when you're ready, you've got
I live at
3
206.
minutes. Yeah.
Lovely, yes.
Yeah, no, exactly.
So I live at 206A and I am very proximate therefore to 202 to 204. I have concerns about noise, about traffic, about light and smell. This is going to be a fish restaurant. So I don't know what conditions are being imposed about filters and illumination, and I don't really know where factors emerge into the real world. Being told about plant, and I'm not quite sure, I can't read the plans, I'm not an expert, so I don't know where the extractors emit to the outside world. So that is one concern. In relation to noise, although there's meant to be sound insulation, there are windows which are openable in the conservatory, and so whatever sound insulation there is will be negative if those windows are open. There are some conditions here which say that the windows can be opened till 9:30 at night, so we only get protection for 2 hours of operation from sound emitting from the restaurant through the rear. So that is a big concern for myself. Light. We've got a conservatory with a glass roof. That will naturally produce light pollution. London is already under strain at the moment. Could it not be a condition that there is some louvered system, above underneath the glass roof, so that it could be closed at night? Because likely these lights will be on after operations in the restaurant have ceased, in order for cleaning and so on to go on, and we're still, when are the birds meant to sleep, And then in relation to the traffic, there's a statement in the report which says that there's no need to sort that out or to look at it any further because the covers aren't that many more than was previously in use perhaps in the cafe. The thing is, it was predominantly a retail business with a cafe attached. It was operational predominantly during the day. And at 6:30, there might have been a few people in there in that cafe, but it wasn't a high intensity operation. It was predominantly the retail dominated the business. And I would suggest that we should look at the impact on the opening and closing of cab doors and people shouting, here it is, no, it's over here, here's our one, this is not your one. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Now, I think Nick Belston, I think you're agent for the applicant, so please join us as well. And again, thank you for bearing with us while we took other applications. So please, when you're ready, you also have up to 3 minutes.
Thank you very much, and I'm also accompanied by the owners of the restaurant and operators, so if there are any technical questions, they're here. So I'm the appointed town planning consultant advising on this. Our client, as I say, is the owner and operator of a number of successful high-quality restaurants, including Wild Tavern and Belvedere. The proposed restaurant is for a Mediterranean, Italian-style reservations-only full table service that will be the sister restaurant to Wild Tavern on Elliston Street in Chelsea. The application site comprises the ground floor and basement, as you know, of 202 Westmead Road. It's formerly the Duke of Norfolk Public House, more recently Cafe 202. Actually, the covers that are proposed are lower than Cafe 202. The site has been largely untouched for nearly 20 years, and the need for refurbishment and attention to create a modern fit for purpose and a high-end restaurant that is respectful to the community and its residents is really important to our client. The restaurant will employ approximately 80 staff and prioritises the recruitment of local staff, and 20% recruited at trainee entry level positions. The scheme as presented within this application is the product of lengthy consultations with officers, whereby our client has sought to ensure that the proposals address the concerns of the council's officers and also local residents. We know how residents are concerned, and our client is really wanting to work with the community to ensure that they work hard, sensitively together. The rear conservatory will facilitate 12 additional covers, and this would lie directly above the lower ground floor extension, would not protrude beyond the established rear building line. The removal of the existing external plant, as you've mentioned, which is currently external, will be obviously put internal, and ultimately there will be an improvement with more efficient plant that is more noise sensitive. Also, it will use the existing flue, so there will be no new flues going up, but it will use better quality filtration for smell, so it will address two things here, the noise and also air pollution. Just turning to the conservatory itself, fully appreciate the concerns about light pollution as well, and ultimately, whilst it can't normally be included as part of an application because it's internal, the conservatory will include blinds and louvers at roof level, so it will reduce noise impacts, and also will continue to talk with residents to make sure that the light pollution is mitigated for. Again, the other point about the conservatory is that it actually replaces an existing pitch glazed roof light, which currently has no mitigation or protection from light pollution or historically. Under appropriate conditions with working with officers, the appropriate conditions restrict the use of obviously the garden to 3:30 in the afternoon. And also the windows will need to be shut within the conservatories by 9 o'clock.
Sorry, time is one less, but I'm sure there will be questions. Who'd like to go first on this? Will?
Just a question for the applicant. I note it is to be said in relation to a previous application, there are 3 trees that were removed, and unfortunately they weren't replanted. We might get to that later. But I mean, would you commit to part of this to perhaps plant those trees and replace them as a gesture of goodwill?
I'm sure, as part of planting and landscaping, I'm sure absolutely. I mean, part of it is to improve the rear. So yeah, I'm looking at it.
Yes, yes, you would. Thank you very much.
Something?
Yes, I think it was mentioned as a concern of the objector, and I was just looking through here, maybe I've missed it, but if there isn't a condition governing the control of smells and replacement of filters for sure, would you find that an acceptable condition?
Yes.
It's going to be quite normal on most quality basis.
Well,
You said in your speech here that the cover will be more than what the cafe had.
No, less. Sorry. Yes, it will be less.
It'll be less than the cafe
Yeah.
had.
So
However, you have 80 staff, so I'm pretty sure that's a whole lot of.
well,
staff.
they work on shifts. And you obviously have a range over from the different seatings over the period, the day, but ultimately based at the current approximate figures are around 80 staff. And currently their existing sister restaurant in Chelsea has 65 covers, and I think it's sort of around 60 staff. Yeah.
So, when you say less than the cafe, because I can't get in my head a cafe that would be more than a restaurant. Do you mean less in any one given time?
Well, I think, of course, it's difficult because we're comparing two different things, but the cafe obviously has more people, more covers, more turnover of servings during the day, so it's a bit busier. And ultimately during that time, but there were more tables within the cafe than there would be, well, there certainly is now.
It's a smaller tables, obviously, people just having a croissant or coffee, you know, the tables were relatively small in the cafe.
I was just going to also ask you, you said something when you spoke earlier about at the time the cafe closes. Do they close at 6:30 or do they just take
the door was not closed at 6:30, but the predominance of the business dropped off at about 6:37ish, and you know, certainly.
And with the restaurant you expected to pick up.
Exactly.
Yes, yeah. I think they're operating under a similar licensing conditions, so the cafe still had, the licensing is pretty much the same. In terms of hours of use, so there's very little change on that.
But then how many hours will it take you for to clean up and put it back to at the end of the day? Would it be?
Oh, may I? My name is George Bukov. I'm the director and co-owner operator.
Can I just say, sorry, you can't make a speech.
No,
but
just
very briefly.
Yes.
Just clarify or make
the current
clear.
operational policy is that our cleaners, normally it's 1 or 2 people. They come early in the morning and they clean the restaurant before the breakfast shift starts. So it's not really after 12.
All right, thank you. I'm just going to actually, Emma, you go first, and then.
Yes.
I'm sorry?
I would like to ask you a question because obviously I don't live there and I haven't made the visit, possibly I should, because it seems to be quite an important application for you as a resident. It's changing for something more used by the members of the public, obviously having a staff. Would you just explain, because this is one of the objections from Ian, and he says here, the proposed chairs, I want to know more about chairs and tables in front.
That's
It's
gone
a
now,
substantial
actually.
change. So this is gone, it's not
The
planned.
front of the restaurant.
It's been, the seating for the front has been removed from the proposals.
This applies to the garden part
Yes.
area?
Garden
Yes.
is also removed, but I'm not sure what you're going to do in the garden.
With the garden, it can only be used up to 3:30 in the afternoon. So at the moment, I think what we're saying for the time being, it will just be internal covers, and obviously they have to work. That they do have the permission to use it up to 3:30 in the afternoon if needs be. But at the moment, it's just purely to use it internal at the start of it.
And this is Monday to Sunday, including bank holidays?
I believe for 3:30, yes, in the afternoon.
Just ask the objector. I mean, presumably you'd agree that if we can formulate a condition that ensures that the flues are really good quality and maintained in that way. I mean, that must be a considerable benefit, because that really is, as you say, having a sort of, that kind of dilapidated restaurant with very ancient equipment belching out smells is not something anybody would want to
The
do.
cafe didn't have that because they were only making like avocado on toast.
Well,
and a couple of
exactly.
croissants,
They were
you
just
know.
making very
But
light
steaks, they don't smell.
Yes.
But you know, this is going to be a fish restaurant, I think, predominantly,
Oh,
and
right.
so it's
So that kind of thing is more important. isn't it?
more important.
The other thing I just want to do again, just if you wish to make a comment, I mean, it seemed to me that to restrict the garden and say it's not actually used after 3:30 in the afternoon, I mean, that is actually quite a considerable limitation, to be honest. I mean, I think that in terms of amenity of people living immediately around, I think you're sort of next door,
Yes.
and also people who are living, it's Lonsdale Road, isn't it,
Yeah,
living
Lonsdale.
across the back.
Yeah.
That is that's quite a significant
That is,
matter.
that
I
is.
suggest.
It's slightly inconsistent having the windows open till 9:30 though. You know, if there are windows in the rear and if part of the soundproofing is double glazing but you have the windows open, then the soundproofing isn't really doing its job. So, you know, noise in the garden at 3:30, you know, ceases. But if you can have the windows open, we're going to get the noise from the whole of the restaurant, not just the hands full of people who run the
Perhaps I can follow that. Perhaps
Yeah.
our agent you can follow up that point.
Yeah,
because I think the conservatory. I think the conservatory is closed and fixed shut. But the point about windows, can you add something? I think Wallo as well.
Yeah. So as part of the application, we did submit an acoustic report, and actually originally we had more windows open, and then we went to the point of not having any windows open. And I think from a realistic perspective, when it's whilst the conservatory will be air conditioned, I think it's also fair to have a conservatory where you can open windows during when we do have some hot weather. And the acoustic report suggested that reducing the number of windows that could be opened and restricting the hours, there would be no sort of additional impact upon local residents receptors. That said, part of the recommended condition is that we would need to submit further information to support that. So the other thing I would just add to this is that we did also submit an operational management plan as part of it, which obviously the operations to date of this property has never been included. That operational management plan includes really setting up a residents liaison group. So our client is responsible, they want to work in harmony with the local community. They want to make sure that concerns are taken on board. It's not within their interest to upset local residents. So again, the operation would be sort of rather than having, there's obviously a condition on that, but also they would operate it if they felt that there were more noise spikes, they would reduce it. It's just having that flexibility.
If you want to, just a quick one, then Wallo last.
Yeah, so I have the same question for both. Obviously it's a restaurant, Mediterranean. Someone cooks for a birthday party and they sing happy birthday quite loudly. How would you, what is your view more or less? I just want to see your perspective. If, for instance, you would be asked by your neighbors, can you just shut windows after 6 and just put air conditioning? What is your view on this condition?
So I think, yeah.
I can understand that sometimes you want to open and enjoy,
Yeah.
but at the same time, there are residents who are living there, and you have air conditioning at 21st century.
And I think, I'm looking, it comes down to, as I said, an operational management plan, so it's common sense. Our client will operate it in a responsible way. So clearly, if they feel that there are noises that are causing impact, they will operate windows and keep them shut. Because the last thing is that they want our residents complaining. It doesn't help at all. That said, generally it would be sensible to have what we consider during summer months, having the windows open, and 9 o'clock, 9:30 was sort of seemed to be a sensible time. But as I say, they will operate it in a sort of responsible way.
It is a northeast facing. That is northeast facing.
But you agree, people go to work, they come 5 and they want to be so quiet and rest because they go to work. So do you think it's reasonable to add condition, shut windows after 6 o'clock as if you are shutting the business, but you're still inside?
I think what we have to look at is what the acoustic report was carried out, and it suggested that up to hours of 9 o'clock with the windows and the number of windows reduced that could be opened would not cause impacts upon local residents.
How many people you will have as a customers? How many tables you have? Because I saw 2 tables and 2 small ones. So what is the capacity? How many barrels you have?
So the overall coverings is around 95.
95 people.
Yes.
Will you be take booking for weddings?
Well, I think, you know, the responsible restaurant is reservations only.
But if it happens and there is no condition, the residents are literally left.
No, I think the planning system doesn't really get involved in the
Well, but
nature
we
of
had
the booking
conditions for
or
the previous
things like that.
application and
We can talk about noise, which we have done. I think it's entirely sensible, but the precise nature of the booking in a restaurant.
Yeah, but we're talking about windows being open when there is a birthday party or the wedding. So it's a matter of windows, when they have to be shut, yes or no.
Okay.
My
Last
my final question is actually a request to the director via its agent. If we grant the application, would you consider planting pollinators in the garden?
I'm absolutely sure we would, yeah.
Yeah, but Chair, I didn't hear the response from a resident. I had the same question to the applicant, and I haven't heard from a resident. What's her view on windows being shut summertimes after 6 o'clock and air conditioning being implemented?
I think that's reasonable, and it is not a south-facing conservatory, so it's not the sort of, they're not going to get full sun. They get the sun from 6 o'clock, 5:30, 6 o'clock. So it's not the sort of beating sun that we get on the front of the building. So it's not like they're going to be sweating like devils in that conservatory. They're not. And, air conditioning should be good enough.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, thank you very much. So you return to your seat. So our questions for officers. I'll go first. I think, and we've got a couple of conditions. I think, Mr. Chairman, that I think we can potentially consider. I think adding trees in the form of planting and also pollinators. I think that's something that could be added to. I think there's an existing condition, isn't there, relating to 11 lopping and topping. Do you think we should add a new one?
Yeah, I would add a new condition.
Okay, all right.
But you could
And
be
the
one condition for
replacement
both. Oh, sorry.
The replacement trees.
Yes, well, that's what I was getting at, yes, okay. And then I think the extractor fans, I think that's something, because I think that is rather important. I'm just trying to see if that's already covered. I think that probably should be
It can be a separate condition.
I think that probably would need to be a separate condition, so I think it is important.
So is that around odour?
Yes,
See,
yes. I think that's right.
we have a standard odour condition.
Yes,
I'll make sure it suits, yeah.
And I think that's sensible. I think we light pollution. I know having conditions about louvers and things inside is tricky, isn't it? About meeting the tests for conditions sometimes.
It's about enforcing it, yeah.
Yes, so it's quite good. But it sounds as though the applicant is actually quite happy to consider this.
I have fixed blinds, that's part of the
Okay,
design.
all right, well, something similar, yes, I think that is good. And I think, colleagues, is there anything else that we
I wouldn't mind to look into point 4 about conservatory windows. If I remember, you have until 9 o'clock back, and obviously you are living next to parking, passing by, people talk, people laugh. I wouldn't mind to really shorten that.
Right, okay.
7:30, 6 when people come from work, just to protect
I mean, I
them.
think it's
Have air conditioning.
what do you colleagues, what do you think?
I think it's reasonable, the panels that are currently in.
I feel it's reasonable, especially, I mean, even if somebody sings happy birthday, it's not going to take too long.
Yeah, but people drink wine, they talk aloud, they go out of, and we know it's open.
Proposal reasonable as.
I think it's reasonable.
Well, I don't agree with it.
Okay, well, in that case, I think we're there. Colleagues, are there any other things you think I've overlooked about
Just
Will?
one
about
point.
conditions?
I know the arboricultural officer, Mr. Burton, did talk about the application just lacking details of arboricultural information in order to comply with CR6 and the Trees and Development SPD. This is just on page 8.
Yes, yeah.
So just in addition to the pollinator and the replacement trees, we also have a condition that that information be produced. And bear in mind the officer has asked for it.
Is that something we can do?
Yes, I'm just reading in relation to. I've seen the comments.
It's just above
No,
heading
no,
8.
I don't know if it relates to this application. That's what I'm concerned about.
It's on page 8.
No, I can see the comment. I'm just
Oh, okay. It's the comments.
Unless members, I mean, I'm happy to check, but unless members delegate that to officers to confirm, in the event there is a tree on site that is subject to a TPO, I think that's the, is that okay? Does that seem all right? I don't want to put it on.
Actually, can I revisit number 4 and just mention maybe shortening time for a weekend and bank days? So we have nothing about Sunday, Saturday and bank holidays.
I'm happy with that.
I think the consensus is that, I mean, 9 o'clock is actually, by the standards of these things, quite early, actually, to be honest. Yeah.
It's not about business, it's about residents that are paying taxes.
Yeah,
no,
we have to, we have to think of consistency in decision making. So I think 9 o'clock is actually, I would suggest, is probably the earliest that we can possibly reasonably put
I'm
forward.
taking care of a weekend check.
No,
Sheraton at least to 7:30.
No, I don't, I think we'd be struggling really, I would suggest to really sustain, I think, for a strong and busy area. Okay, so I think we should make a decision. So the recommendation is to grant the conditions set out in the report and the additional conditions that we have added by this discussion. Okay, so can I see those in favour on that basis, please? Anyone against? Are you abstaining?
Yes.
Oh, so that's granted by 4 votes to with 1 abstention. Okay. So if we can now turn to the, well, we're still on the North Pack, and we move to 62 Scarsdale Villas, please. Thank you. And for the first time this evening, Fiona Ray is going to be with us. So, Fiona,
Lovely,
when
thank
you're
you,
ready,
Chairman.
please start.
First, we'd like to draw the members' attention to the addendum report and the 3 additional objections that we've received, including one from ESSA. So planning permission is sought at this site for a new basement, and that is under the property and half of the rear garden with associated light wells. There's some photographs on the screen for the front elevation, and here's the rear. Importantly, I just want to identify this one, which is the shed or the garden building that people have referred to in the objections. On the screen now are the plans, the basement floor level as proposed with the cinema room, gym, office, study, and the existing lower ground floor level. And you can see those light wells at both the front and rear. These are the street elevation and front elevation existing and proposed, showing that basement level. Here is an existing section of the property and that garden building to the rear, or shed kind of structure. That's the lower ground floor, and this is the new basement level. And then finally, a section through the front showing again the basement level. Officers are recommending approval, and I'm happy to answer any questions, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now, in fact, there are actually no speakers for this, so we will move straight to our discussion with officers. So, can I invite questions? Well, do you want to go first? Then?
Yes,
Well,
thank you, Chair. There's quite a few objections regarding flooding, and we did suffer quite a bit of flooding in the last couple of years. And I was wondering, what have we done to mitigate that, to more or less know whether the area is on a flood line, whether excavating will cause flooding. Also, there is talk about damage to neighboring properties when the same type of work was carried out. I also would like to know what did we do to mitigate that.
I'll answer the first question first, the flooding question. That's a key consideration for us with any basement. So we ask for a whole suite of supporting information, including a construction method statement that looks at the geology of the area and the construction methods involved. That's really key. Also, as a council, we've kind of led the way with basement policy, thanks to our members, in limiting how big the basements can be. So it's limited to 50% of the site. Here, it's 50% of the site apart from the shed on top of it. But generally speaking, there's plenty of area, in our opinion, to allow for flooding and drainage to be retained. We've also got condition 8, which is for sustainable drainage strategy to be submitted. So we're getting further details on how they'll do it. And ESSA did kind of draw our attention to that policy as well, and I double checked, and it's definitely so that we can secure they are implemented and maintained. So we're making sure they're staying there in the long term to deal with that. And we've got a suitable pump device being secured again by condition 9. So from a flooding point of view, we can feel under planning we've gone as far as we can, and we're comfortable with that. With regard to the impact on neighbours and stability, we have a construction method statement submitted, prepared by a qualified engineer, and we've added a condition relating to the professional management of the work, so someone will have to oversee that and be responsible for that, and that's just an extra layer of protection for neighbours. You've still got the party wall agreement, which is another bit of legislation, and building control. So again, we're confident in planning terms we've gone as far as we can with those conditions.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Well,
Thank you, Ms. Ray. Just in terms of the proposed rear elevation, the type of bottom sheet glass that's used in the extension, I mean, is that really in keeping with the conservation area? It's out of character with all the other Victorian windows, and I'm assuming just looking at the plan, it can be seen throughout all the rear windows of Abingdon Villas. Is it possible to potentially condition a more traditional glass fascia? Is that something we can do?
The existing rear elevation already has that kind of large glass area at lower ground floor level.
I'm just thinking it makes it even worse. It's now very substantial rather than just being a small aspect.
To try and reassure you, the existing glazing is at that lower ground floor level. So the views of it are limited by that staircase, the side boundary walls. You don't see any of that within this section drawing, but it does make it more enclosed. And then below it, so as you look as a true elevation, it does look very glazed on those two levels. But that basement level will be, very limited visibility. Actually, it won't have any visibility from external because of the grille that we will have, or they will have on top, and it's surrounded. So whilst I completely understand your point, because in elevation it doesn't look particularly attractive, in context,
won't be able to be seen from the buildings behind.
And I'll just very quickly turn again to those photos of the rear so you can see. So that's the existing kind of windows and doors that are hidden somewhat by the side staircase, the high boundary walls that are quite characteristic of that particular group, and so the ones below won't be seen.
Thank you.
Thanks.
So,
Hello, yes. Do you have a photograph of the rear garden building?
It's quite hard to see because of the level of screening, but
That's
it's
what
here.
I thought you were pointing at.
Yes.
Because the difference between, to me, a shed, which is like 4 sort of timber kind of panels with a sort of timber roof just sitting on a bit of ground, and a garden room, which is what some of the objectors refer to, is that a garden room would sit on a sort of concrete pad, which would have difference in drainage terms. So when you describe that as a shed, would you more accurately refer to it as a garden room? Because it does appear to have glazing in the section that you looked at. It looked like it was a glazed building rather than a
I think it's
timber
fair.
hut.
Yeah, I absolutely think it's fair to consider it as a garden building, but I would also consider it as an ancillary garden building. So it's something that's small in relation to the main house. It's well spaced from the kind of side boundary walls and well screened. It doesn't, for me, read as something that is notable in terms of footprint size.
Yeah,
And,
I don't object to that at all. Just a technicality, and maybe this is a policy gap or not clear, just it's always interesting to me. If that garden room was shuffled along and actually stuck, exactly the same room, exactly the same construction, stuck on the back of the house, that would reduce what the 50% of the garden, of open garden would be. Because it would be a rear extension stuck on the house, but because it's shuffled to the back of the garden, it doesn't count in the 50% in the sort of calculation of what is open garden. That's my curiosity.
yes, I think that's fair. I think that's fair assessment. It's labelled as shed on here, but if that volume was moved, we may treat it slightly differently. I still would be very reluctant to raise a concern with, the footprint of the shed is very small. So if there was an incursion in the 50% rule under CL7, that minor, I would be worried about saying that that's unacceptable.
It looks not that minor in terms of when people calculate 50%. But look, if there's nothing in the rule, if there's nothing in the wording of the document that says garden is considered open land and anything that's built on it with a concrete pad is counted as not garden, if it doesn't say that, then the policy is where we are.
In the addendum report, we just reiterated the policy a little bit to make that very clear. So it's the CL7 states that basement will not exceed 50% of each garden or open part of the site. So in its truest term, this doesn't exceed 50%.
Is that an open part of the site?
But the shed is within that open part of the site. So there is an open part retaining 50%, but there's a shed on top of it. So that
Is
the
policy
area of the shed.
compliant with that word?
That would be our conclusion.
Can I just follow up on Sam's point here, because these sort of garden buildings, they do constitute development, don't they?
Yes.
But they're permitted development. Is that right?
Quite often. So there's certain structures you can build without planning permission under Class E of the General Permitted Development Order, subject to height limitations and overall size.
Exactly. And also related to that, a building like that, whether it has a concrete base or not, it could get demolished tomorrow if the owner wanted to. Yes, it wouldn't require any permission to demolish it, remove it.
Given the size and nature of it, I don't think it would be substantial demolition requiring planning permission.
Yes, and equally, if the application was granted and this was all built out, and the applicant had demolished this building, then again, under permitted development, they could simply put a new garden shed or garden building back, and again, that would not be covered. That would not require planning permission because it would be permitted development.
Yes, that's
So
absolutely
is that
right.
correct? Yes.
So if say we put a condition on to require its removal, they could remove it but then put it up again.
Okay. Can I actually, Edward, sorry, I jumped in ahead. Edward, jumped in.
Have you conducted site visit?
The officer has. I haven't personally.
Because I've been looking at the objection from 62 and the neighbours are pointing out here that the draft CTMP claims that there is a loading area outside 60 Boston Road. This is not correct. There is no loading zone outside. So how this project can go ahead, how it is possible, feasible, when there is not really place to start from, there is no loading. So how are we going to go ahead?
Well, we've got a condition attached again, number 7, for a construction traffic management plan, and that's really important. And we're not fully supportive of the CTMP they've submitted,
but we've got enough comfort from it that we know it can be done, and our knowledge of the borough, our own records, everything else. So we believe it can be done. There's a lot worse kind of situations around small muses in the borough where that people have successfully done it, but it will need far greater scrutiny and engagement with residents before we actually approve a final one.
And now it's number 8, in the same leading inaccurate statements. The applicant claims that the construction of the basement includes its fitting out within 30 weeks. This is not possible and it's highly misleading. A previous application for the same property, 2014, applying for a larger space, but for storage only, estimated time of 70 weeks. So would you comment on that? Because obviously it's a misery for neighbours.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to refuse it or make assumptions. We're not sort of construction managers. I wouldn't be able to advise you that that is a reasonable period or not, unfortunately. So I think it's an indication, but I couldn't say that it's definitely going to be 30 weeks.
But if it's not loading area, it means we have to really figure out around the neighbourhood.
I am confident that Scarsdale Villas will be able to build a basement with a CTMP that we approve and stringently, check with our transport colleagues, given the other ones that have been sort of delivered successfully in the borough. So we need more information, absolutely, and I totally agree with you. They need to engage more with the neighbours, absolutely. But I think there's a solution.
So do you have a TfL report? It's possible? Is it not on the red route or anything like that?
No.
No.
Don't have it. But the
No,
conditions
it's not on the red route,
No,
apologies.
it's not. Oh, okay.
No, it's not. I mean, I think it would. I think potentially construction traffic. I think what has been lodged at the moment does appear distinctly sketchy, and I think, would be a mechanism ensuring engagement with residents if we were to say the CTMP actually had to come back to committee once it had been worked out properly, and I think that would act as an incentive for the thing to actually be consulted properly. I mean, I think Mrs. Ray is absolutely right. I think a location like Scarsdale Villas, it should be capable of being achieved, but I think that might be something that we should do. I just wanted to explore just a final point, and that's this issue, because one of the characteristics of this area is that the Thames water infrastructure is very poor, I'm afraid. It's falling to pieces. There are always Thames water people around in Scarsdale Villas, and also actually that western section of Abingdon Villas has a bad history of Thames water having to sort out problems with their infrastructure. Can I just be absolutely clear that we are getting the distinction right between things that are within the planning system and things that are not? So just how Thames Water go about their business is not a planning matter. That the mechanism that we can affect things is through these conditions about demanding the SUDS condition and also putting pump devices. Is that going as far as we can go as a planning authority in considering these matters?
Yes, I believe so, and that SUDS condition expects more from the applicant, so an improvement overall, which is another positive that it can be gleaned.
Can I just add something, because this is clear to me?
Yes, please.
Just literally the same objection mentioned here. The Coptic church nearby is also doing similar construction work on the basement. So if you have a question mark about loading outside, I think, do we have something, I'll just ask for clarification. We're talking about overdevelopment of a property, as it's called. Do we have something called overdevelopment of a local area, creating more traffic and more misery for the residents? How many excavation in a basement can be allowed on the same street at the same time?
I mean, we could allow every single house to have a basement at the same time, but then what the protection we have under a planning legislation would be that our condition requires them to be talking to each other, liaising with each other and making that work as best as possible. And obviously members in our local plan and what they've done to reduce the nature and scale of basements over the course of 10 years is actually quite impressive. And we're limiting how much soil can be taken and what disruption happens as a result of that. So in planning terms, we really are going as far as we can, I believe.
So if, for instance, you have 5 basements on the same road, you will allow it?
Yes, but they have to talk to each other in their construction traffic and manage that appropriately.
I think just briefly, I think one of the critical things actually is the professional management of work, which we now put in as conditions regularly, because I mean in the representations there's reference to several instances locally where basement work has created damage to neighbouring property, and also there's a reference to work where a basement has gone on for years, which obviously is very tough on anybody who's living immediately by it. But I think the conditions that we have are really what we are able to do as a planning authority. Are there any final points, any final questions? No? Okay. Well, I would suggest that the application, I think, before us does comply with our policies, and as such, I think, has to be considered to be acceptable on balance. However, I would suggest that the CTMP be brought back to committee for approval, and I think that would be a useful mechanism to ensure engagement with neighbours about how all of this was actually going to work. I mean, colleagues, does that seem reasonable? Okay. All right. In that case, if I can put the recommendation to the vote with the conditions and also the CTMP to come back to committee. Can I see those in favour, please, of that? Okay, so that's granted on that basis. Thank you. So now we return to the south and to this time to 32.
Yes, back to Berry Walk, but number 32. I just have a few photographs to show you and some mock-up images. The plans didn't reproduce very well on the screen, nor have they done in your pack, so apologies for that, but hopefully the presentation will make it clear what the proposals are for you this evening. The site is shown there with the red pin. You can see in this aerial view that along Berry Walk there are lots of buildings in what looks like the rear gardens of the properties on Sydney Street. There's been a lot of garage conversions and a lot of these are now separate dwelling houses. These photographs show you the existing state of the site. So this is the space at number 32 Berry Walk. And again, in the left-hand and right-hand photos, you can see the development on either side looking along the road. And these are from within the site itself. And essentially the proposal before you this evening is for the creation of a single bedroomed dwelling house within this space. As I say, here's a mock-up of how it would look. You can see it features green roofs and a small garden area at the front there to the entrance on Berry Walk. Another image just from a different angle, but again it shows you the prevailing character along Berry Walk and the other structures within the rear garden area, what could be read as the rear garden area. And then the last image for you is just a section to show you how the dwelling would be laid out. Note it is over 2 stories, but there is a setback from Berry Walk itself. And although there is a degree of excavation, this would not be classed as a basement under CR7. However, given the size of the site and the excavation involved, we have still required a construction traffic management plan, which will be secured by condition. And that's the presentation for you, Chairman.
Good. Thank you. There are no speakers, so we move to questions to Deputy Carroll about this.
Yeah, I just want to ask, why do they want to cut the tree? Is it really on the way? It doesn't have to be cut? Can it be not preserved?
would not be possible to develop as they have proposed and preserve that tree. A report has been provided looking at the health of that tree, and it's concluded that it's a category C tree, so it has some value, but its value is limited. Our arboricultural team are satisfied that it can go, subject to an appropriate replacement, and you'll see that we do require that by condition as well as part of the landscaping scheme. It would need to be a mature tree species that would grow to replace it in order to repair.
Well, my question might not be a planning question, but there are all these questions on the letters about deeds and land registry and all that kind of stuff. Is that not planning?
I would steer away from anything to do with land ownership. It's not for planning to determine. I don't know the legalities of the site, but if they don't have the other relevant conditions in place, it wouldn't be possible to develop the site.
Thank you.
Yes. Okay. So the recommendation is to grant. Now, of course, because it's a new dwelling, there's a section 106, an agreement, an undertaking that it's card-free, I assume. Yeah.
That's correct. So
Yes.
if you are minded to agree with the recommendation,
Then we have to bear that in mind as well.
a decision wouldn't be issued until that legal agreement is completed.
Is completed. Okay. So the recommendation is to grant, bearing that in mind, and also the conditions to that. Can I see those in favour of grant? Okay. So that's, are you in favour as well?
Yes.
Very good.
The
So,
tree will be
thank you.
replanted. It says replanting of trees. So
There would be a new
Yeah.
tree secured by condition.
So that's granted. Right. Fine. Okay. Thank you very much. And so finally, thank you, Kid. So finally, we go to Kensington Memorial Park.
That's me again, thank you.
Yes.
It's before members this evening, because it's a council-owned application. This is it's actually a section 73, so a variation of something that's already been approved. And what was approved previously was a scheme for floodlights, the same thing, but with more lights. So they have gone away, looked at it, and they want to reduce the number as on the poles that they already have permission for. So the number of lights is being reduced. There's, as a result, less light spill, and we have some details of that, and officers are, very comfortable. There will be less of an impact with this change, and I'm recommending approval. Thank you.
Any questions related to that?
I have just a curious question. Do we have any legislation asking us how high the lamp is from the ground?
Yes, we haven't actually put that slide on it, but it should be in your pack. We've got the details of the height overall, and that will not change as a result of this section 72. So the height's been approved, that remains the same. It's just that basically the number of lights on the top of the pole will be less.
Okay. So I think we can move to a vote. So the recommendation is to grant. Can I see those in favour, please? So that is agreed. Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you
very much.
That was the
Thanks for that.
change the rates. I know that. My impression was.
It's an interesting place.
No, I mean,
But it's.
Well, in one as well.